what we'll be doing is the first part will basically be kind of a bit of a chat with the guest speaker that we've got. And then after that, we'll go into some breakout rooms just to talk about what's been spoken about with the chat with the guest speaker, and also so that everybody can meet each other and do a little bit of networking and that sort of stuff as well. Then we'll just come out of the breakout rooms and ask some questions and wrap up from there. And hopefully everyone will find the sessions really insightful, and it'll be inspiring. And then also further in the year, when we can, fingers crossed, we'll like meet up in real life and all of that sort of stuff as and when. So cool. So welcome, John. He's one of the original founders of Potentialization, as it originally started. And originally it was a meetup group for actually meeting up in person, and it was created about 5 years ago. So one of the main things is that it would be useful to really know is what is the big relaunch? What is the relaunch basically?
So, yes, I think it's really useful to just look at that history, because I've actually been planning, hoping to make a big difference on a big scale for a long time. And that the meetup group was really an attempt to start that. But I think we very quickly ran into the limits of how many people you can physically get into Manchester city centre. So I've always been thinking for quite a long time and making notes and planning that we'd do something online as well. And even to bring that into a website where we can help a lot of people towards reaching their potential. So a few months ago, my personal situation changed, and suddenly I was in a position that I could finish the job that I was in, and I'm aiming full time to work on a new system to help a lot of people reach their potential. So the interviews are a way of introducing that to people and getting some interesting topics going while we're busily building that software. So it's a relaunch because we're obviously online, and we are leading up to hopefully a really exciting online system that will do a lot of things. I don't know if you want to ask me particular things to go through. The mission, of course, is increasing global capability to reach our potential. So it's a big mission.
That's a big mission and a half, but a really good mission there. Yeah, because I remember the meetup group years ago now, as it was, and one of the really nice things about it was not only would there always be really nice speakers and stuff that had a lot of knowledge in their fields, but also just the people that you meet that are part of the group as well. So, but can you just explain, perhaps if there's like new people here, like what is potentialization? You were talking about this global reach, but what do you really mean by this brand?
Well, what we're aiming to do with an online system is we're going to create a system to help people understand themselves. Now, there's quite a few psychometric tests out there and different things like that, but they're quite expensive to go and find a coach. I mean, a good coach might charge you £100 or £200 an hour. There's lots of things out there, but they're quite difficult to access. So what we're aiming to do is to bring a lot of that knowledge, a lot of those systems, to a platform that's actually free in its basic form. So people will be able to do all sorts of different tests, learn about themselves. Based on the results, we want to put learning paths in there so that we can help them move towards what they might want to do next, how they might want to improve, all sorts of other things like that. For a long time, I've always thought about this as almost a code name for it, and the notes I've kept as an alignment project. Because what it's about for me is helping individuals to align with our own strengths. What are we good at? What are we not good at? What do we need to improve? But then as well as that, if we can understand the principles of, well, everybody's different, everybody's got different personalities, different strengths, we can actually align with other people more effectively then as well, whether it be teams, different organizations. If we also add in skills, we can start helping us to decide what's a good fit for us in our lives. How do we make it work more effectively? How do we get our whole life in order and structured so that we can actually move forward as effectively as possible? So,
oh, wonderful, wonderful. So there's basically loads of layers to it, and what you put into it is what you get out of it as an individual. And also this platform will enable people to be able to find out so much about themselves. So wonderful. So kind of like, we've spoken a bit about the meetup group and the website. What exactly is the relationship between the two, and how do the two work together? Could you just explain a bit about that?
Well, in the short term, we're building the software, so it's going to take us some time to do that. So what we've done is brought the meetup group back and these interviews. Over the next few weeks and months, we'll bring in some experts in various different things. There's a word that kind of describes the whole person. It's not really used very much just yet, but I think it's going to get more popular. Personology, which is a kind of science of the whole person.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we're looking at the different elements of that. So psychology, motivation, well-being, emotional intelligence and skills, and trying to do a full system. And then that will help people align. So for example, if we're looking at skills, one of the skills that's often missing when we come out of school is basic life skills, how to manage our money. One of our advisors is working at changing the financial advice market, because I think many people would regard financial advisors as not always working in our best interest. They've got a conflict of interest with commissions, all those kinds of things. So what we want to do is pull a lot of different things together so that we're trying to unblock us reaching our potential. So while we're building up the interviews and getting some really great speakers in, we're busily building that software. But another part of the software is that part of it, as I say, is aligning with other people. So once we've got enough people on the system, what we're looking to do is try to connect people with people that might have common interests. I'm on an estate of houses here, and there's 150 people on the estate. And it's always intrigued me the way that society's changed. That I remember lots of years ago when I was young, moving into a street and getting to know everybody. But it doesn't seem to happen anymore. We've got all this social mobility and people move around the country, but we don't actually know the people in our own street a lot of the time. Wouldn't it be wonderful if I could get everybody in the estate of 150 people and more, wider society, and actually look for synergies? It might be that somebody 5 doors down is somebody I ought to go and have a chat with. Because there's going to be common interests, but practically at the moment it's almost impossible to do that. So that's at a very local scale, but of course you can do that at a global scale and actually ask people, would you like to be in a group of people, or if you've got a project, who else in the system might be able to help you with it, that kind of stuff. So it's actually starting to bring community back as well. And obviously the meetup group is an example of that, where we're actually talking to each other online. And as you say, hopefully in the future, occasionally physically as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an interesting point that you make there, actually, about, you know, because a lot of the time it can be very easy to be busy, being busy, doing a lot of stuff, and people can potentially be over communicated, but at the same time, not know a lot of actual people that are in their local communities and stuff like that. And obviously then the global reach as well. So, yeah, so that's really interesting, actually, and you can easily see a load of the benefit that you can get from the potential of, if you make authentic connections with people and everybody's trying to achieve things to be the best in the service that they're delivering, what value that can deliver. So, like, there's got to be. It all sounds quite it's such a big subject. You know, I guess is one of the things that's going to be happening with the speakers, perhaps breaking it down into things such as psychology or emotional intelligence or well-being and that sort of thing, because while it's a great vision and stuff, like, you know, bite-sized chunks and things so we can make our way there would be an excellent way to go forward.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we're going to have a whole series of speakers on different topics. Each one will be an expert in their own particular field. So what we're looking for is what are they passionate about? What's their work about? What can you tell us about it? But I'm also always trying to get under the hood a little bit and say, and how do we use that to help people reach their potential, to grow? How can we plug that into a bigger vision so that we can actually benefit from all of these different things? So if I just look down some of the advisors, we've got, as I was talking about, finance, personality traits, which is very much the business psychologists, when they work with companies, it's surprising how many people still don't quite realize that we've actually seem to have different kinds of personalities, that some get on really well together, others not so well. But just recognizing that there are those different kinds of people. I mean, a really obvious one is introvert and extrovert, but there's other elements as well. And even a little bit of understanding can really help you to, not quite sure what the right word is, perhaps come to terms or accept that other people are different, and then start to have strategies as to how you might work more effectively together. As long as both parties are willing to say, that's why the sales department works in a very different way to the accounts department. We don't need to be constantly at war. What we need to do is understand why we're different and what we're trying to achieve. Sometimes we need a go-between. We need somebody that's got a personality that can work with both of those different groups. It's actually a problem in lots of companies that the founder has got one type of personality and then only takes on similar people to them, and you actually end up with an organization that's got a culture that's all the same, and then hasn't got that breadth of different personalities that can relate to other businesses and the public in the different ways it needs to do. So yeah, another thing I'm just thinking is one of the things you said just a little earlier, we can get overwhelmed with information. I think this is really a large problem in society at the moment, that the internet has got so good at publishing information. What we haven't got anywhere near so good at is filtering that information into ways that work well for us. And a recent one that's come along, which is really flying, and people are talking about it as being the new social media platform that's taking off, is Clubhouse, where people just log in and have voice conversations. I've been in a few times and had some really amazing conversations with people. But on the other hand, it's completely unstructured. You've got invites coming at you all the time for all these different conversations. Just imagine if we could actually create subjects for people to talk about that we know are tailored for me as an individual to go and meet people in Clubhouse for things that are going to be beneficial, and just have a little bit more structure about how I engage with the world. The same thing, of course, will apply for if you're applying for a job. How will they engage and match with that company or charity or whatever else it might be? I think I wandered off the question there, but
No. That all sounds good, because it's all interesting stuff. So it's all about kind of like widening reference points and using knowledge and information, but using it in a strategic way, if you like, to be able to get the most out of it. So people can be the best they can be, but without all of the information overload. So almost like you can see the wood from the trees to make sure that you can follow the best path, basically. So interesting stuff. So so things like there are some areas though that I'm not too familiar with, like things like emotional intelligence and things. Could you just explain just a little bit more about that and what people can expect from that?
Yes, if I look at the 5 different areas that we've got, the first thing I should say is that these are a little bit arbitrary, that actually the whole person, all the different things are interrelated. So it's for convenience. But emotional intelligence, at its very, and I'm not an expert in emotional intelligence. We've got Robin Hills, one of the advisors, is an expert on emotional intelligence and resilience. But the very basic principle for me, if I was to put it in a sentence about emotional intelligence, is it's actually being more aware, or as a friend of mine called it, it's intelligence about our emotions. So we start to understand our own emotions. That then gives us a space to make decisions before we act, because we've got that time to actually say, well, what does this emotion mean? Why am I angry? Is it something that the other person's really done, or is it actually something that's inside me that's been triggered from a past memory or something like that? So if we then understand that same processes are happening in other people as well, if we both start to work on that, we're going to be able to engage much more effectively in terms, and I once did a little bit of sales training, and the trainer said to people, and I think he was exaggerating a little bit, but he asked the question of all the audience, how much of a buying decision is based on the factors, what the product's like, all the different details, all those kind of things, and how much of it is emotional? And his answer was, and I say probably exaggerating a little bit, but it's almost all emotional. We have to actually emotionally buy into a decision. So it's a fundamental part of it. And the other thing he was talking about is that when you first engage with somebody in a sales process, if you get off to a bad foot, then the person that you're trying to sell to is then going to spend the rest of the time talking to them, finding reasons not to buy off you because emotionally you didn't connect. If you do emotionally connect very well, they'll then spend the rest of that time finding reasons to justify why they want to buy something off you. Or if you've decided you love a particular car, you'll spend a lot of time trying to outline all the reasons why it's the perfect car. But actually, the main decision is emotional. So
buying my car, yeah. So cool. So.
Yes. And then all the different areas are actually overlapping. One of the big ones, which is part of my story as to how I got here over the last 20 years, and I'm still struggling as to what to call it, because in the system that I was learning about, they call it values, but that word gets very mixed up in terms of what it means. So another word for it is perhaps our motivational model. What drives us? How do we think the world should be? Or we might call it worldviews. And that's actually very closely related to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So depending what level of our needs we're actually operating at the moment, we can have a very different view of the world to somebody that's operating at a different level. And for me, when we actually start to recognize that, in the same way as we start to recognize the emotional, actually somebody's in a different place to me, and we can then make better decisions and try to work with that instead of against it, we can do the same with worldviews. Unfortunately, in the world, a lot of that's not actually happening at the moment, and you only have to watch a bit of Parliament when they're shouting at each other across the floor, where we've got two different views of the way the world should work. We've got, grossly simplifying, but we've got a worldview that says if we have entrepreneurs in the world, they generate the wealth and the wealth will trickle down and everybody will be better for it, versus a worldview that says, no, we have to put everybody equal and support everybody. And this traditionally might be called left and right, or right and left, whichever way around I said it. But the sad bit about that is that they're both partly right in different circumstances. We need a balanced view of all of these different things. But of course, the politicians have to justify why you're going to vote for them, and they have to be seen to be the best. So unfortunately, that means that you have to make the other side look really bad. I was a counsellor for a few years, and one of the things I really remember was that we had somebody came in to do some training, and the whole focus of the training session was how to make the other side look bad. I should say at this point, I'm not very political. I wanted to learn about how politics works, and I was in the middle, shall we say, as opposed to on the extremes. And to me, this is quite, is it shocking? It's sad that it's a huge part of politics, which is trying to undermine the other side all the time. But unfortunately, it's because, again, because of all the publics, a lot of their decisions are emotional decisions. If they see somebody failing, it's like, well, I can't vote for them. So this actually works. So we actually need a more aware public. So there's a lot of work to do. It needs to go through a whole education system for our whole lives to try and support people to grow, to understand themselves better, and to actually, the word potentialization is about, it's realizing our potential. But to do that, we need to understand how people learn and how they grow, which is why we have all these great speakers coming, because we want to understand all the different aspects about different elements of our own person, whether it's well-being, emotional intelligence, psychology traits, whatever it might be.
Interesting. So loads of different elements to it then, basically. Okay, interesting stuff. So that's a really good summary. And everyone, that's basically kind of an introduction, very quickly actually, on a very broad subject of potentialization and what we're going to be aiming to achieve, which is people understanding how they can learn and how they can grow and how they can achieve their full potential using specialist speakers that are experts in their subjects. In terms of these meetings, in addition to which this IT platform in which people can enter their details and also can be to find out things that resonate with them and what work with them to help improve themselves, as well as that can be used in businesses and organizations and charities, etc., to help support the right profiles and understand the ways in which they should move for what they're trying to achieve as well. So John, have you got anything else you just wanted to add quickly before people go into breakout rooms and we send them in with like a couple of questions and they can introduce each other and things?
Well, one of the things I should say very quickly is it's in fact Tim Berners-Lee, who was the founder of or the visionary behind the World Wide Web, the idea that you can go on a web page and click on a link and it takes you to somewhere completely different in the world. He actually said a few months ago he's really disappointed with the way the internet's going.
Oh.
That it's actually a lot of big organizations that are owning our data and we're losing control. So he's trying to create a new system that will actually put control of our own personal data back into our own hands and we decide who has it. That really resonated. I hadn't got as far as working out exactly how to do it, but that was something I've got in the plan that we really must do. We must protect people's data. So what we can't do is imagine if we did some kind of recruitment in terms of matching an individual to employers in the future. What happens at the moment, you end up with your CV in some big database and everybody goes and finds it and you get recruitment agents ringing you all over the place. What we really need to be doing is saying, if somebody has a job in a company, if they've got they're looking for somebody, they fire the requirement, the ideal person, into the system, and we will then allow people that match that to choose whether to talk to them or not. So we would never release their personal details to anybody else, other than the fact that they've then got a choice to share with them that company if they want to. So it's got to be an absolute fundamental part of the system that we protect people's data. We're about giving them control about how they grow, rather than far too many companies manipulating us with different cards, loyalty systems, and all those different kind of things, which a lot of people now think has gone too far.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. Perhaps that's something I should have just sort of mentioned a little bit more, was that, yeah, people's data is absolutely key to keep that their own personal data and then make sure that that is protected. And it's about how they choose to use their data to improve themselves, to be the best they can be. And they can share that with who they choose to share it with, basically. But it must be protected, yeah. Cool. It's interesting what you say about the creator of the World Wide Web, actually, because on one hand, you can think, oh, it's been an absolutely fantastic success. Because people use it all the time and it's in the palm of your hand and it gives you loads of knowledge and information that you might not be able to get, like you used to have to go to the library. But on the other hand, like you say, who really owns all that and how much truth is there in what you're seeing and reading online and stuff? Interesting.
And I should actually say, the interview that I saw, they asked him that, and what you're disappointed with the internet, and he said, oh, you've got to get me straight. It's a wonderful, brilliant thing, but it is being misused by big organizations and individuals are losing control of their data. So it's definitely not all bad. It's just that it needs to improve in some areas. Absolutely. And hopefully we can play a little part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Cool. Great. So what we'll do now is we'll put people into a couple of breakout rooms. And when you're in the breakout rooms, best thing to do would be just introduce yourselves to each other, kind of like who you are, maybe what you do, or an interesting fact about yourselves or something like that, and what you'd like to get out of these sessions. And then if you've got any sorts of questions or thoughts on either anything that John said or anything that you'd like to see in future sessions. And then what we'll do is we'll be in those breakout rooms for 5 minutes or so, and then come back in and have a bit of a chat and go from there. Cool. So it was actually really interesting, actually, in our group, with the things that people were saying and the projects that they're working on. So what I've said is just invited everybody to put their contact details in the chat box if you'd like to connect with people. So I'll stick in as well our details here for Potentialization if you'd like to follow on LinkedIn or anything like, or Facebook and everything. So, but yeah. Feel free to put your contact details in, stay in touch with people. But yeah, let's unmute everybody and see if there's questions and discussion.
I think I've done it, but I don't know, Jason and Michael, have you just not chosen to unmute yet?
I just chose to.
Yeah. I'm not quite used to Zoom yet, but so, yeah.
All right, yes.
Well, what you can do is while you're in the middle of a talk or presentation, you can you can force it so people can't unmute themselves. So I wasn't quite sure. So no, that looks like we're good. So sorry, Phil, do you want to take over again and tell us what we're doing next?
Well, it's just, is any questions for anybody, for John, from anyone?
John, am I muted? Am I off mute? I am off mute.
Yeah.
We talked about potential grades and stages of developmental profiles and systems. Is that still something that we're thinking about?
Sorry, I didn't
go on, mate, sorry.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch what you said. Stages of...
So you have different ideas when it comes to developmental work. All of this is, as far as I'm concerned, it's developmental, and that's the idea, where we're empowering people to be self-aware and to grow their thinking and to develop themselves, that kind of thing. So from a skills perspective, if you're going to have a system that develops skills, that's different to a system that develops their thinking or their cognition or their complexity. So does that make sense?
Yes. The main aim, the focus will be those developmental skills and awareness. But what we will also do is let people record their skills and their strengths as well. But that bit is perhaps more for matching. So it might be, if you've got a project, who might resonate with that project? What skills might you need? All those kind of things. If you were looking, I'd like to say exactly where we'll go in the long term, but if you've got one particular skill that you've got missing for a job that you might want to do in the future, we might be able to have a log of, well, actually, you can go and do these trainings in other places. We wouldn't want to try and build all that training into our platform. We want the main platform to be the developmental, psychological trait awareness, all those kinds of things. But we could perhaps steer people in directions of what they might need or where they might get it in some of those other areas. Does that? And did you ask as well, will we have different levels? Because one of the things we will do is we want a whole series of tests that are free. One of the big problems I see is that when I talk to business psychologists and clinical psychologists that want to go into much more depth, they're all having to try and make a living off this, which is fair enough. But of course, what that means is they end up being in little small bubbles and all thinking that theirs is the best. Whereas what tends to... Sorry?
I said, when mine is, clearly.
Of course, yes. Well, I'm going to feel a bit like Bruce Forsyth, that your system is definitely my favourite one, absolutely. The dances every week, doesn't it, to everybody? You're my favourite. So
yeah, exactly, every week.
Yes. So, but what actually tends to work better on the internet is to have a free service where people can engage, and that builds a bigger platform. And a couple of the best examples are Google search is free, so everybody uses it. It's really good. It's free, but they can then monetize off the back of that and sell advertising. Now, we don't want to necessarily sell advertising and invade people's privacy like that, but also Facebook works in the same way because the core service is free. But what we can do is if we get a basic level of developmental growth, awareness, emotional intelligence, or psychological traits, and whatever it might be, we can then host perhaps more complex things where coaches might want to use our service and work with people in more depth. Because as much as our global system might help a lot of people with some basic awareness and set them in the right direction, people will obviously want to engage with a coach, look at things in more detail, all those kind of things. And of course, they'll pay the coach and there'll be something involved in more in-depth psychometrics for that. So there'll be introductory levels that are all free, help us all individually with our own awareness, which hopefully then leads people in further directions of more growth. And actually as well, this is where my software engineer comes back in and my technology hat. The world is changing massively in the next, it's getting faster and faster change. But the big shift coming at the moment is artificial intelligence is getting extremely good. And we're going to see massive changes in job markets. So we're going to need far more flexibility in people to be able to change their jobs. It's exciting and frightening all at the same time, what's going to be happening. But if we teach people particular skills and they get attached to them and they can't do anything else, that's going to be really hard to shift. So we need an education system that really allows creativity, self-awareness, awareness of other people. And that's got to be the focus, even above individual technical skills. Self-awareness, other people awareness, relationship awareness. Because a lot of the simple jobs where you just hand burgers out are going to go away. The robots will do them.
Hallelujah. Music to my ears, that.
Yes. And Darren, you're mute at the moment. This is the dog, I guess. Yeah. So there's an awful lot.
These are all very interesting concepts, and John, I'm hating you for doing it tonight because obviously I've got to leave in about three minutes to go and prep for my Facebook thing, and I really want to jump into this conversation and get my teeth in. But yeah.
What I would say, this is the start of a conversation. What we want people to do is engage with us over the next few weeks and months. Come on the journey with us. We'll have more of these. There'll be questions every week with different people. So we'll get into a lot of these topics. And we want to try and bring that knowledge and support. And it's a non-profit. For me, it's really important that we're a non-profit. We're not here to become billionaires if this did become big and global. We want people all over the world to say, well, I've got something interesting to add and I'm happy to put it in the pot because it benefits us all.
That's right, so and that's the thing with information as well. If you're working with systems that have got massive amounts of information, if you're a company, nobody's going to trust you with it.
Yes.
Whereas if you're a non-profit, yes. I think the fact that people have an expectation that you're going to look after their stuff.
Mm. Yes, there's always challenges. Darren's putting a comment in that it will take work to make this work. It's not going to happen overnight, and we'll have to work at it, and we'll have to look at the brand. One thing I should say is non-profits can still pay staff. If we're going to have something that's got millions of users, we need to pay staff. But my strong view is that we need rules, that we can't have anybody earning 100 times what the basic people are. We're going to have to adjust salaries. If we've got some highly skilled technical people, we're going to have to pull them in. So, for example, as we get bigger, we're going to have a Google Cloud expert to make sure we've got the data locked down in as good a way as possible and all those kind of things. So there might be some fairly expensive skills involved, but nobody's going to be getting paid £1 million a year or anything silly. It's all about what can we do. So fair wages for a fair job, and then hopefully a whole network of people supporting us as well, possibly contributions, possibly helping with marketing or social media or whatever else it might be. I know Phil's getting excited about the social media at the moment because we're just starting to learn a bit.
Yeah, I've not really used it that much before, so I'm just trying to get into it. Yeah, so it's good.
And I should say as well, Greg, you won't be missing a huge amount because we will finish formally at 8 o'clock.
Okay. So is this going to be a weekly thing?
We're going to do every week with a different person being interviewed, absolutely.
Right.
And we haven't decided yet, but it might be good that we could have a clubhouse a day or two later that would be much more free format and discuss anything that came up. But I mean, do people think that's a good idea? Is everybody on Clubhouse yet? You can't be if you're not on Apple, but I know, Greg, you've been
I'm
on.
not on Apple. Can I just ask, it might be an obvious question, but that's my job, I suppose, is what is the purpose of the interviews? So there's somebody is interviewed, people listen, then we go into the breakout room. For what purpose?
The purpose is for people to learn two purposes. One is the upfront. Hopefully people can come in and learn a little bit about that topic. So we'll have somebody do a talk on emotional intelligence, for example. Yeah. This one has been very much more, this is what the system's going to be. But I wanted to do that first, and then we can save this, and it might be useful for people to look at afterwards. We'll have to think about it and just see how bad I've been to being interviewed.
Can I just say I've got to go, guys. So okay. I'll see those of you that are here next week.
If you do use this, Greg, are you okay that we've recorded it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll check with everybody else in a minute.
Can you send me the link when you put it out? So I've got it.
Will do.
Cheers, guys. I'll see you soon.
Okay. Cheers, Greg. Enjoy your Facebook.
Thank you.
But another purpose, of course, is to build up the list of people that we're engaging with that hear a little bit about this. So if somebody comes and listens to a talk in, I'm just looking, your hat is moving, isn't it? Is your hat part of the background?
Yes, it's one of these little tricks you can play with.
I just suddenly noticed it doesn't quite go up and down with your head properly, but it's fascinating. But yes, so no. if somebody, yes. Oh, there was the cat, wasn't there? There was the lawyer that was a cat by mistake and couldn't turn it off. Yeah. It was in the news. But of course, if somebody watches one of these in a month and quite likes that particular talk, we can point people at the website, say, sign up to the email list. We'll tell you about more events. And when the service goes live, we'd love you to come in and do some of the basic tests for free, spread the word, all that kind of thing. So it's part marketing, and it will be ongoing as well as we get more and more interesting speakers. And if the platform does get big, I suspect and hope that we'll get more and more big names saying, can I come and do an interview? And we'll get really, really good people coming in.
Yeah.
And we're building up some, not as good as Darren, he's got the best system in the world, we know that, but actually, another thing I should mention is, it won't, even with a system as good as Darren's, it won't be all plain sailing. What we're going to be doing is some research. That what I want to do is correlate data, all anonymously in the background. We won't be misusing anybody's data, but within the system, if somebody's willing to do 3 and 4 different tests, whether it be MBTI, emotional intelligence, I'm just trying to remember, Darren's forgotten the name for a moment now. He might tell me in a minute. But all these different systems, but the motivational systems, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I am really fascinated by, and I don't like the name self-transcendence that Maslow uses for higher levels, but as our view of the world changes, how does it affect the rest of our personality and the way we present and the way we relate to everybody else? So I want to look at some artificial intelligence, machine learning, and actually look for what you might call the master code in the background. How do all these systems relate? What's missing? As we plug new systems in, we can host other systems that maybe some various psychologists in the world might say, actually, I want to put my system in. I think it adds something that's not in the others. We could actually measure that and say, what is it that's different that's not actually appearing in the other data? So we're looking towards a bigger picture of what a human is. Another element of that in the background is collecting social information and environmental information. That if, for example, in very simple terms, air quality in a city is much worse, can we see that in the data of well-being or personality traits or whatever else? If we do get huge amounts of data, hopefully we'll learn a lot as well over the next few years. So, yeah, sorry, that was all about the purpose of the interviews, but it's the purpose of the system as well.
Thank you.
Wonderful. John, who's the we? at the moment? You keep referring to we. Who are the we? Do you have like a core group?
Partly it's habit, because we will be a community, but we've got 3 directors, because we are a company, but it's a company not for profit.
Right.
We will have to look in the future whether to make a charity or not as well, or possibly both, because we'll be having some commercial activity to generate income. But we have 3 directors. One of them is me. One of them is Christopher Cook, who's an expert in spiral dynamics, which is that worldview motivational system. I've known him for lots of years. And we've also got the other Phil in the background, who's got lots of commercial experience. So the 3 of us there as directors, but we've also got, I think, almost a dozen people now that have kindly let us use their name. Darren, we haven't had you on the list yet, have we? We'll have to talk about that as well. But we've got a list of people that are happy to provide their expertise as we move forward in different areas. So as we say, Chris is the well-being and positive psychology, all that kind of stuff. Robin Hills is emotional intelligence. Steve Connolly's financial systems. Phil, of course, everybody's in different places, aren't they? I can't point at him. He's got a lot of background in software testing, but from a really big perspective of making sure things are right. So it's got much bigger implication. Also, he'll tell us more next week, but a fascination with a lot of this wider psychology stuff as well. So, yeah, 3 directors that are holding the fort, as it were, a dozen people behind, and then hopefully over time we'll build a community of supporters as well in some way, maybe a Facebook group or something like that, where people can feed more in.
And what do you need at this stage to move things forward as far as you can identify?
I tend to be always waiting. Greg will tell us, because his wife is a marketer, that says perfection is the enemy of, I can't remember the exact words, but progress. So we've got software being built, which is going to take a few months.
Right.
So until that's there, we can't actually get the tests going and get people learning in the platform. But this group, for a start, we want the interviews. So if people know really great speakers out there, that would be good. And I'm sure with our network of people, we could pull in some incredible people and try to build up these interviews and get more people involved and build something. This social media, I think Phil's learning all about that. There's going to be a lot of different things. One of the film, Jay, in fact, we're getting close to the end if you want to tell us in a minute. The film, hopefully, no, not hopefully, Jay is doing an incredible job. I'm sure he is. It will show the passion and the vision of what we're doing. And the idea of that is to engage people and say, yes, I really want to support that and get involved. Software-wise, I probably will end up with a few people helping in that respect. Christopher knows a Russian guy really well, who's a full-stack back-end developer, as they call it. So he's going to help me monitor it. The software, because I'm doing it with my own money, is being built in Vietnam. This company looks really good. They're much cheaper than trying to get it done here. So we've got this pause for a few months, but we really ought to be building the community around these interviews and things like that. And as I say, I'm a software engineer. That's not necessarily my forte. I've got a passion for, we're going to do something exciting, which is why Phil's going to do these interviews. He's more interactive than I am. I'm more technical.
Yeah, so if anybody knows anyone that they think might be interested in coming to next week's and the future one, please, tell, friends, family, colleagues, and spread the word basically as well. So we can start, as John says, building up the community, and I'll be focusing on helping support him with, doing the interviews or being interviewed as such next week. But it's all about building that community while the software is being built.
And of course, a very, very simple thing is like our Facebook page. Join or I don't know what it is in LinkedIn. Is it like or join the page on LinkedIn as well? If you want to know all about the interviews as they're coming up, the meetup group will put the announcements out through that. I need to create an email list as well that will probably do the same. That we'll put that out every week to let people know where we're up to. So it's generally building that network in various different ways is the mainish thing at the moment. There's going to be things that I'm not even aware of. So if you think there are things that people could be doing for us, we want to feed it all in the pot. So please let us know of any ideas. And that's partly what this was about tonight, was let's just get that seeded, that actually we want a community of people helping us as much as we can.